My name is Sven Iversen. I'm the director of the Association of German Family Organizations, and I'm also involved in 2 of the 3 inviting organizations here. And I'm very happy to see you all, at least see your names in here, and welcome to the session today. We have already one answer. Yes, I see Casey is the one you don't see on the picture, who hides behind the International Commission on Couple and Family Relations, and she is visiting and us and checking from the back door kind of that everything runs smoothly, and indeed she has seen the question we have in the Q&A, which is in Italian. So it should be one of the Italians answering. Yes, but to start formally, I'm very happy to have you all here. There are 3 organizations jointly organizing this today. Myself, I'm involved in, like I said, 2 of them. Coface Families Europe is one of them. It's the umbrella organization of the European family organizations, but we'll hear a little bit more about it from Annemie Drieskens. You can see on the screen as well, who is the president of Coface. Then the obvious one, ICCFR, the International Commission of Couple and Family Relations, which is very much dedicated in showing and sharing knowledge on family issues, family relations, coming from all kinds of different perspectives, like from research, like legal psychology views, and of course from a lot of different countries that are involved. And that's also the reason we have tried to find a timing in the middle of the day, because we know that we have now participants for who it is very, very early in the morning, and we have some for whom it is quite late in the evening. Well, the third partner is CISF, and well, I won't bother you trying to pronounce it in Italian, but we have Francesco Belletti with us, the director, and he will tell you more about CISF as well later on. But let's say, coming to the content, what are we planning today? We have taken the, I think, very important topic on fragmentation in family policies, namely trying to avoid fragmentation in family policies, and at the same time looking at 2 different studies and reports who have tried to compare different European states. In doing so, well, I mean, probably I don't really have to say why this is important, but I think there's no real doubt in having a lot of fragmentation, especially when it comes to states, like Germany is one of them, Belgium is another one, where there are very strong different political levels. And the fragmentation is especially a challenge in the early years of a family, as there are a lot of different stages going on and a lot of changes going on, from caring at home, EC, so the early childhood care, and then school. So there's a lot of things where one thing should go hand in hand with the other one. And we obviously have the distinction of, well, monetary help for families, and then we have the institutional help, the infrastructure help for families, which is complicated enough having only those 2. But looking inside those 2 systems, it gets even more complicated. Well, I guess everybody of you can tell several stories about infrastructure where one hand doesn't really know what the other does, and monetary systems where you might get support from one system, but don't receive support from the other system because you get support from that one, and so on. So it's, for family, it's really, really difficult to find the way and to find the right support for them. So I think it's really good to have reports that look at this, to have reports that try to have a comparison between the states, even though it is, of course, very different to have those comparisons. Usually it's, well, very hard to make things really comparable, even though they might sound like being comparable. So it's even more helpful to have two of those reports who have tried that, and we will hear more about them. And then we will have the chance to have some questions and some more answers on things that we might not have understood. We are going to do this in a very, well, classical way, let's say. We have two inputs. The first one will come from Martino Serapioni, and the second one from Francesco. And then you will have the chance to ask questions and receive answers. You can do that both ways. We have the webinar chat. You might have seen that already. We have the Q&A function. You can use this. All of us, you can see on the screen, will be able to read both of them. So I think that won't be a big problem. And if you have any remarks or comments, please state them. It doesn't always have to be just questions that need to be answered. I think there's so much knowledge by you yourself, so you can just write a comment and a remark that will be very helpful, I think, as well. But before we start having our inputs, I'll hand over to Annemie Drieskens, the president from Coface. It's very nice to see you. Good that we're here.
Yes, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today as president of Coface Families Europe and briefly present our network. We are a pluralistic network of 50+ family organizations from all over Europe. And we work from the start, since 1858, with and for families and children to promote their well-being, health and security in our fast-changing society. And it is together with our members and with the financial support of the European Commission that we want to ensure that all families, regardless their structure or background, have access to resources, services, and time arrangement they need to thrive. This is what we call our RST mantra. And Coface Families Europe, we work on many areas. First of all, we engage with policymakers, and we work, I would say, tirelessly to influence European and national policies to ensure they are inclusive and support family well-being. In many fields, we have built our knowledge, fields like work-life balance, social protection, child rights, education, digitalization, long-term care, early childhood education and care, and so much more. And I would refer to what we recently published, because we launched our State of the European Union for Families, which was our assessment of 5-year work of the Commission von der Leyen. It shows that there is a lot of work delivered to support families, but there is still a long way to go. And therefore, we have launched our Act Now campaign, where we present 10 key challenges that families are facing, and we call on the new European Commission and the European Parliament to address those challenges. We even launched a song to encourage people to raise their voice for a social and inclusive Europe. So we do a lot with address to policymakers, but we bring also together a wide network of family organizations from across Europe, and we foster collaboration between them. We learn from each other, we exchange inspiring practices. And together we raise also awareness about the challenges and opportunities families are facing today. We do this through campaigns, events, and educational programs. And recently we launched the LINK program, where we will also deliver e-courses. The first e-courses we launched recently was focused on management of school bullying. So a lot on education is delivered by Coface. And I would say last but not least, we conduct and we disseminate research on family-related issues, and we provide valuable insights that inform policy decisions. And to home in on this, we recently joined forces with the Center for Family Studies of Odyssey, University of Applied Science. This center is based in Belgium, and it conducts cutting-edge, practice-based research on a wide range of family-related topics, from parenting, child development, to family dynamics and social policies. And this center offers educational programs and trainings, and they interact with the field and encourage debate about families, relationships, and parenting, with a wide range of partners, academic institutions, government agencies, and NGOs. So we thought this is a good partnership, and we joined forces to launch our European Observatory on Family Policy. This is a joint research program of Coface Families Europe and the Center for Family Studies. And with this observatory, we want to serve as a platform for the observation, for the analysis, and the dissemination of evidence on family policy and on other social concerns that are directly relevant to family well-being across the European Union and beyond. And we share with Odyssey and Coface the stated ambition of promoting policies which support all types of families without discrimination. And we have set also the goal to create and to promote a framework that outlines the benefits of collaboration and greater integration in the field of family policy. We want to share successful practices. We want to foster collaboration and integration in family policy. And we want to provide valuable insights into a more harmonized and efficient approach to family policy. We want to interact with researchers, family organizations, and anyone interested in the future of family policy. And we want also especially to formulate recommendations for policymakers to ensure that family policy is more integrated and not so fragmented. And I'm very glad that I can introduce today the presentation of the first report of the observatory. The first report was launched later last year, and the title was Towards Greater Family Policy Integration Across Europe. So it expresses our ambition clearly. And the scope of the report was families with young children. Because especially families with young children, as Sven already said, they have variety of needs, wide variety, wide diversity. So successful fulfillment of their needs requires a joint effort on many levels, collaboration between many actors. And in our report, we provide an overview of the current policies in 5 member states. But our coordinator, Martino Serapioni, is here with us to present this report. So I would say thank you for your attention, and I invite Martino to take the screen and to introduce you to the findings in our first report.
Thank you, Annemie. I'll try to share the screen immediately. So yeah, let's see. And see if this is, you have it? Okay. Perfect. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon. As Annemie said, my name is Martino Serapioni. I'm research coordinator in Brussels for Coface. And well, quickly, I'm not going to repeat what Annemie said in her introduction about the observatory, which she said everything is there to be said. What I wanted to stress, to jump straight into the presentation about this knowledge hub that we founded in 2018 22 alongside Odyssey University is that from the very beginning, our decision was to focus on the complementarity or the complementarities that exist between family policy areas, like to explore innovative models of coordinated action across agencies as opposed to investigate internal dynamics specific to any one of the fields that compose family policies. Like in this period, like as Annemie noted, our first output published in November 2023 has been a descriptive report, comparative report, which looked at 5 European countries and tried to, let's say, capture and describe how these countries are going about improving alignment and coordination in relation to what we perceived and identified as some fault lines of fragmentation that cut across the family policy sector, the family policy field, truly segmenting it. And particularly when it comes to services and frameworks that address the needs of families with young children, which, as Annemie said, was the focus of our report. The issue of fragmentation. Well, the starting assumption for our work was that in most European countries, we specifically looked at Germany, Poland, Italy, the Flemish region of Belgium, and Finland, but like in most European countries, the setup of programs and initiatives that target families with young children is still really segmented with multiple agencies and multiple administrations that each oversee a separate area of service provision, and this is naturally creating a very challenging situation for families with young children, like, for a variety of reasons. And like, for once, the issue of fragmentation can be simply that of an increased travel time between 2 locations that a family needs to be at to get different services at the given moment of time, but can also be that of having to navigate across different eligibility requirements and different enrollment procedures for services that maybe are not the same, but are largely complementary to one another. The issue can be that different services follow different outreach strategies. So families in challenging circumstances are made, certain services become more accessible for families in challenging circumstances, but not other services. But even I think beyond the problem of location and inconsistency, like a fragmented service setup where services do not align with one another tend to create discontinuities in the way not only services but also professionals understand and frame the needs of children and their parents, and naturally also in the way they go about answering these demands. So if the fact that the family policy field is fragmented was the first assumption underpinning our report, the second assumption was that we worked on is that something has been moving in Europe in recent years on the front of integration and alignment. And whether for reasons of economic efficiency or because, there is actually an attempt to improve the delivery of services for families, but both European frameworks and national level initiatives have tried to bring together and establish new mechanisms of coordination between agencies, services, and professionals in this sector to overcome these aforementioned fragmentations. And maybe the most widely known line of fragmentation related to the family policy sector that is being discussed in Europe right now is the so-called childcare gap. The childcare gap refers to that period, if you're not familiar with the term, the period between the end of, let's say, well remunerated, well paid, statutory care related employment leave, like parental leave, the period between the end of well paid parental leave and the beginning of an entitlement to a place in formal childcare. So in the countries where this gap in time exists, the childcare gap is a period during which the family is normally left a bit hanging so to speak, like left relying only on its own resources to provide childcare. And the notion is normally used to highlight both this condition and its root cause, which is the lack of continuity between the complementary frameworks of leave and the framework of early child education and care, just two frameworks that in our mind serve largely similar, if not identical goals, and that in an integrated family policy scenario should not just relate to one another, but be perfectly aligned, so not to leave any time period uncovered in between. The other crucial point of fragmentation that we touch upon in the report, less frequently discussed, is, however, the lack of coordination between services that, generically speaking, cater to families with young children during the perinatal phase and beyond in the early years. We know that improving the well-being of children and parents during pregnancy and in postpartum and during the first 1,000 days and the early years in general is like really becoming a priority on the political agenda, both at the European Union level and more or less everywhere at the national level too, at least in principle, in theory. But in parallel to this, we observe also a growing recognition of the, let's say, the importance of approaching these goals, like child development and family well-being, but also crucially prevention, approaching these goals through comprehensive cross-sectoral approaches, like addressing, for instance, not only the physical aspect of well-being in maternal care, but also the psychological dimension in postnatal attention, like not only treat the educational or cognitive traits of early childhood development, but also the social and inclusion aspects altogether. Developing coordination between the agencies and the organizations that are traditionally in charge of pursuing these more specific policy goals, which can be broadly regarded as emerging all together during the perinatal early years period, like as Annemie and Sven pointed out, this is increasingly seen as important. And however, it's not easy at all to create coordination, like integrating these different services, particularly services, these different from one another into like a cohesive framework presents some really significant challenges. And for once, early parenting support is not a distinct policy field, but it's more of a composite, extremely complex space with multiple organizations, multiple regulations, agencies, workforces, professional cultures that coexist within it. And it's not easy to reshape this space in an integrated fashion. And overcoming this fragmentation does not only require taking advantage of, I don't know, short windows of opportunities, like I think to break away from that resistance to change that characterizes institutions that political scientists normally refer to as path dependence. But so it's not only capture the opportunity, but it also requires ideas and new models, like concrete ideas and concrete new models. It is not enough to say that we should dismantle traditional silos, but we also should be able to indicate, like point at what new integrated models we want to replace these siloed approaches to delivery with. And these integrated models that we want are underpinned by what multi-agency protocols and are supported by like what governance frameworks. And in our report, we try like maybe not to answer, but to describe some answers, some national answers to these questions. And in particular, we focused on family centers in a second, third section of our report. Family centers, we see them as an example of one possible example of such new integrated service models, bringing together provisions and professionals that were originally scattered across multiple agencies. And these centers around Europe are becoming more and more popular. They still vary incredibly in form, shape, and crucially in the importance that is attached to them by political authorities. Normally, the way they manifest themselves is by offering let's say, a baseline of co-located services catering both to young children and parents of young children, from perinatal care to counseling, pediatrics, and some type of social assistance. So like the models I'm getting into probably the more interesting part of this presentation. I will describe rapidly 3-4 models we touch upon in the report. Although in the report we talk about other experiences too, but these are the ones I think are more interesting. The first model is the one from Finland. I cannot pronounce the name, family center in Finnish, but it's a model that exemplifies a case of extensive and long-standing integration between health and social care sectors. And it's so well-established, long-dated coordination between agencies is particularly so in relation to preventive aid for families around childbirth, but they also offer a variety of other services. Family centers in Finland serve as true hubs for multi-agency work, and especially in recent years have gained massive strategic importance in light of a couple of recent reforms that have expanded the space for interactions between the health, social, and early education sectors along different dimensions. Like the concept of family center in Finland like really encompasses an entire network of, let's say, physical facilities where services designed to meet the needs of young and expectant parents, children, and young people are co-located. They used to be managed by municipalities, but these family centers have today passed under the responsibility of the so-called wellbeing service counties, which is a complete new level of government recently introduced in Finland that has been introduced basically as it's like a district-like level of government that's exclusively devoted to the management of the welfare system. And they oversee the family centers now. And additionally to the facilities where the services are co-located, family centers usually are able to rely on a network of what they call open meeting places, which expands substantially the range of on the territory. They serve mainly as spaces for group activities or events, but also spaces where the services, the activities organized and normally delivered in the central family center can be not delegated, but like devolved. It's a really effective method to reach out to families, even isolated families on a vast geographical territory. And in general, to close it, Finnish family center is how to say, like relies on a notion of multidisciplinarity, and they're also informed by a principle of universalism. They cater to all families. Okay, let's say universalist in this sense. They're multidisciplinary, but they cater to all families. There is a really strong element of universalism underpinning them. There are some key functions that are monitoring health, basic pediatric healthcare, supporting positive parenting, offering rehabilitation, some counseling after divorce, key support to migrant families, supporting their integration. These key functions need to be provided by all family centers all around the country. And this is a key feature that, for example, tell it apart from the Flemish model. And the Flemish region is seeing similar progresses in the direction of integrating health and social sectors. In 2023, an integrated care department has been founded, but the Flemish equivalent of the family centers actually date back to 2013. They're called the Houses of the Child. They were created, as I said, in 2013 by a merger of parenting support agencies and preventive services with the idea of providing holistic support to families. The key idea behind these houses is not that much to provide a universal baseline of services all over Flanders, although the principle of proportional universalism is really important in their conception, but So universalism is there to a degree, but I think that the key idea is really to enhance collaboration between existing actors already active in family support that exist on the territory of Flanders, but that if we're left alone would provide a fragmented type of support to families. So like centralize the strength and the resources available on the Flemish territory in co-located facilities where they're more easily accessible. And in this way, the way the houses are born and very much, I think, still function is as partnerships and networks between organizations and local authorities. The result is, again, not unlike Finland. They present themselves, those that are not managed as online houses by municipalities, but let's say physical houses, emerge as, again, as co-located, multi-purpose physical facilities constituted of local services focused largely on prevention. How comprehensive their support and preventive offer is, however, oftentimes depends, of course, on the resources made available to them, but also on how strong and expanded the local network around a certain family house has been able to grow, which often depends on the quality and the actions of the direction and management of the children houses. So more targeted to the territory, more responsive to the characteristics of a territory, but at the same time, more space for variation from one area to another compared to the Finland case. What they offer normally is preventive healthcare, parenting support, and general activities promoting social integration and cohesion. This is the baseline, but they can grow in many extremely interesting directions. Yeah, but the essential services that you would more or less always find is outpatient clinics and drop-in counseling teams and support centers. And Annemie can maybe can expand more on the story of these extremely interesting services later if there are questions, or I can try to do. Germany, real quick. Okay, Germany is the nightmare of comparative researchers because it's so differentiated internally that it's almost impossible to. Anyway, real quick. The expansion of family centers in Germany started in the early 2000s, and as part of, like, I think, a true revolution in the way family support was conceived in the country. The idea was to create institutions that cater to the whole family, offer child center and parent center services together. Like, and immediately various municipalities, as the onset of this discourse in Germany, then maybe Sven can talk what triggered it exactly, but like various municipalities started establishing their own settings starting the mid 2005, 2010, and like these centers were given normally like 1,000 different names depending on where they emerged. And at this point, I think in 2024, I think 15 out of 16 landers actually have a regional lander law defining in their own way, the family center as a juridical subject. The two states, but perhaps the state that I personally found more interesting, also because it presents a model that is different from Finland and Flanders, is that of North Rhine-Westphalia, which I think, along with Lower Saxony, kind of like led the way in the establishment of family centers in the 2000s. I think that in North Rhine-Westphalia law was the first in Germany defining family centers from 2006. And what's interesting and different from Flanders and Finland is that in North Rhine-Westphalia, they did not go about creating co-located multi-purpose facilities. They did not start from outpatient clinics, and they did not start with co-located facilities anew. They started from ECC, from early childhood education daycare centers. They started from daycare centers, and they decided to expand daycare centers in a social direction. They turned them into like daycare center plus or Kita plus. they thought that daycare centers provide a point of reference, a strategic point of reference on the territories that could be exploited, taken advantage of it, like a hook that could be really helpful to reach out to parents, especially disadvantaged parents. And they started to build them up by adding parenting, mentoring, counseling services in some cases, even some healthcare, like basic healthcare functions. And by 2023, like 40% of municipalities in North Rhine-Westphalia, Lower Saxony, sorry, like 40% of daycare centers in North Rhine-Westphalia have evolved into family centers, as they call them. And like weekly, this is a bit different. I'm taking a bit of a detour by adding the Poli per l'Infanzia in Italy, because these are not examples of family centers. But anyway, just give a bit of background. In 2025, Italy implemented a reform known as La Buona Scuola, which introduced like significant changes to the Italian education system. And a key aspect of this reform was the creation of an integrated early childhood education and care system for children aged 0 to 6, il so-called Sistema Integrato di Educazione e Istruzione. The reform replaced the prior dual or split ECEC structure with a really new institutional order that prioritized the educational continuity and organizational integration. Well, the core of the reform was outlined in the Implementing Act of 2017, which again focused on establishing an institutional and regulatory framework for integrated provision. The implementation of the system was planned to take place progressively, gradually, following a multi-year plan. And this reform package, I think, had three main components, like a new institutional framework, as I said, placing the entire cycle 0 to 6 under the Ministry of Education, and some general objectives and strategic goals for the integrated cycle, focusing also on equity targets, and a national framework of mandatory qualifications for professionals working in 0-3 settings, which was lacking before, and a national curriculum for the sector, which was also lacking before. The reform did not merge the ECC segments into a unified early education stage, but rather aimed to transform their distinct organizational and pedagogical cultures into a revisited, remodeled, strategic institutional alliance within the integrated cycle across formally separated agencies. And we've seen something around in the past 7 years since the Implementing Act was passed, that successful continuity strategies really depend on local authorities introducing a new mechanism of cross-institutional coordination, and this includes regional and interinstitutional working groups, and but also crucially the gradual rollout of unitary ECEC settings or Poli per l'Infanzia, as well as also the expanded use of pedagogical coordination platform. But these unitary settings are like a new type of service on the Italian scene, as they're defined in the legislation as integrated ECC facilities that are supposed to collocate daycare and preschool services within a shared physical space. And this approach is aimed at fostering pedagogical innovation, experimentation, and providing also an optimal platform for socialization and learning activities spanning the entire crucial years from 0 to 6. Okay, I'm almost done. I just wanted to go through quickly some conclusions. Well, more than conclusion, I wanted to give some points for reflections. Like, one of the conclusions of our reports, so there are some signs that the importance of providing a holistic assistance to families is being increasingly placed on the agenda, both at the national and the European level. And the idea that we do not only need to expand service provision, we also need some frameworks within which the services that we are expanding are actually able to cooperate with one another. Well, this is, our impression is this is becoming increasingly accepted. We do not only need to expand, we also need to create some frameworks for these expanded services to cooperate. Conclusion. Okay, overcoming the challenge of fragmented services requires the dismantling of silos and the introduction of cooperative networks, sure. But we also need to be ready to accept the fact that the forms that these networks will take will change, and it's good that they change. They need, to a degree, the space to be really responsive to the characteristics of the areas where they emerge. Like, this seemed to me to be one of the essential features of success for the successful emergence and consolidation of these integrated models, as we wrote the report and we collected experiences that are emerging in Europe in these years. These integrated models, this integrated experience needs to be pushed. They need a legal framework, national or regional, within which they can emerge, but they also need the freedom to develop in a way that fits the territory where they do emerge and are meaningful to the people they're supposed to serve. And that's it. Thank you for the attention, and I'll pass it to Francesco.
So, good morning to everybody. Now I'm trying to share the video. Okay. This is a very nice opportunity to take a discussion among our organizations on a issue which is more oriented to the public policies, while in our network of ICCFR, we usually deal with the relational and psychological or juridical aspects. So this was very interesting, and I thank Martino for his very clear and detailed presentation. In discussing about the problem of avoiding fragmentation in family policy, finally, I find out some transversal criteria that I want to add to the presentation of Martino, which are related to two main dimensions: a sort of micro-social dimension and a micro and micro social dimension. So I will speak a bit about the issue of multidimensionality of the family, the issue of subsidiarity in family policies, how family policies can improve family life and well-being, the issue of family empowerment, and how to use an evaluation of the impact of public policies on family to understand better what is going on. And there is some real connection with the issue of fragmentation of policies. Now my organization, the International Center for Family Studies, was born 50 years ago. It is not 174, but 2094, so 50 years ago. And we usually, from the very beginning of our work, we were dealing with this multidisciplinary approach with a scientific committee of expertise from different areas of interest, juridical, sociological, psychological, demography, and so on. And we, from the very beginning, were interested in having some comparison between the national Italian situation and the international dimension, although we usually work at the national level inside Italy. And we did in this long period many researches, training for professionals, media actions, seminars, webinars, and so on. And since 1989, we issued a report on the family in Italy. This is the last one, which is policies serving the family. And we are coming from the Catholic world, and we are inspired by the church social teaching. The first issue is something which is a typical feature of our center, and a special feature of the family as a social place, which is the multidimensional aspect of the family. We are dealing with the public policies, with family policies, so we are giving relevance to some dimensions of family life. But family life is related to family relations, to values, to spirituality, to economic and solid structural elements. So we need to take into consideration all these different dimensions, and understanding what happens to families if you make some public intervention is not so easy, because you mix all these dimensions together. So it is necessary to have a sort of sense of the limit of what you are doing. If we focus mainly on family public policies, we can understand how families improve their life, but we also need to understand that there are so many other aspects that are relevant when you intervene on family life. So this is why there is a relevant aspect of subsidiarity in understanding family policies, because you can have policies who substitute their family's responsibilities, or policies that support their own role. So family policy should promote the empowerment of family relations, the sense of responsibility. So we have to understand, if we do not expropriate families from their role in, for instance, in the instance of early child education, how services can help and support and cooperate with parents and with extended families in taking care of the young children. How family policies want to recognize and to award the well-being created by the family, and how the family is recognized as a social subject, and how it can participate in a better way to the life of community. For instance, some of the experiences Martino spoke about were also of joining all the local community around these centers at local level. And that was a good practice, in fact, in involving also a positive role for families. And especially family policies should be targeted not on individuals, but on families' relations, on a family considered as a network of relationships, internal relationships among the members, and also with the external community, with the extended network of all relatives, and with the local community. So this is something special also at the international level, because also OECD was recognizing this starting from the family. We need to understand how services are better or worse organized if we start from the point of view of the family, which means how to promote the responsibility of families, how to recognize the economic central role, the protection and insurance against hardship that families can provide, etc. And it was rather relevant that also United Nations, starting with launching the International Year of the Family in 1994, were supporting the functions of the family, not the idea of family in itself, but recognizing that the family has social function, and society demands something from families. So this is a list from 1993 that it is still interesting, which is establishing networks and bonds between spouses with towards the young generations, the care for frail members, and services and resources for family members. So family is a social actor, is a part of a family-friendly community. When thinking about fragmentation in family policies at macro level, while Martino was working mostly at micro level, but on the macro level, the public policies can support families through cash benefits, through services, and through the tax system. These are the three main frameworks of the public policies at national level. And then there is a fourth step, which is a bit different, which is coming from the economic world, which is the work and family balance, which it is not public funded, not only public funded that promotes it, but it depends also on the companies' policies and companies' awareness of the need to support the family dimension of the workers. But, and the real problem, and maybe also a possible answer to how to limit the fragmentation of services is how much each of these for action can better empower families. And also these three other aspects that are as well relevant, which is the issue that already Sven and Martino quoted, which is that in many countries, the public sector is acting at very different geographical level and administrative level. So you have national policies, regional policies, local administration working on the services, and this can produce a very high degree of variation between areas and not always in an urbanized way. Another relevant aspect is the issue of care for families, which is intergenerational and not only related to childcare. Actual families are strongly engaged by the care for the elderly, even if there is a good public intervention on elderly people. Families are strongly engaged in this. And so this is a very relevant aspect. And a third aspect, which is really relevant when we think about the family policies, is how time is available for families' choices. And the work-life balance policies are typical of this problem. And so the family empowerment is relevant and needs to start from thinking the family as a social actor, which has to have plans to choose among the different possible services in the area, and also which is the family life is rapidly changing through her cycle life. So when you have small children, you need some different services than when you have adolescent children, and so on. So for family empowering services, there is a better effect if you work at local level. If you consider the family as a subject, if you promote the resources of the family, and if you support family engaging in the local community and in the public scene. And this is a different way to explain how empowering families is necessary also to avoid family policies fragmentation. And it was interesting to understand which is the way to understand if the public intervention is really useful. This is coming from a model from USA, which was first supporting policy decision-making, trying to help policymakers to understand which is the impact of their decisions on the real family life. And the family impact model in the USA was stressing five principles, which is my public intervention, my family policy at local, national, regional level is supporting a higher family responsibility, is supporting family stability, is strengthening family relationships, is supporting every kind of family, which means supporting every different condition of families, and the possibility, the opportunity for the families to be involved in the public community. In Italy, in these last years, the Catholic University in Milan adopted and adapted this model of evaluating family policies, adding a sixth criterion, which is the ability of the families to put together families and to build networks among families and family associations. So a good family policy is helpful in this six, if it pursues these six criteria. And a final reflection, which is related to the mix of family policies, instrument tools, is that every nation has different mix of these approaches, and every nation has different family strategies. For instance, in some countries, there is a dual full-time career family, while in many countries, and not only in the Mediterranean countries, there is one full earner worker and one half-time worker, which is not necessarily is the woman. For instance, in Netherlands, there is a very strong model of this combining work and family life. And so every nation shows different family models. So we should think how different countries are adapting family choices and public interventions, and picking out the good practices in each one of them. But I'm not sure that there is one best way in comparing different countries. So cross-national analysis is helpful to find out good practices and to try to apply and adapt to a different countries. And so I hope that this contribution can be helpful to raise more discussion, and that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thanks, Francesca. I think that was very helpful and a very good addition to what Martino has said. Meanwhile, I've seen that exactly at 3:30 we have had some more attendees attending. I assume that this has been just a time issue. As I explained before, ICCFR works on a global scale. So if this from time to time happens, that we are kind of being unsure what time zone it is and what time zone has a summertime and which doesn't. But it's nice to have more people joining now 10 minutes ago. Even though for those people, just to give you a brief summary, what you have missed is Martino Serapioni input on the findings of the Observatory of Family Policies, especially looking at the fragmentation that is orientated to the families in an early stage. Yes, but thanks for both of you. Are there actually any questions? I've explained before for the latecomers, we have the chat open and we have the Q&A function open. You can write in both of them. We'll see both of them. we read both of them, and anything is very, very helpful and very much appreciated, whether it's a comment, a remark, or a concrete question. While you might be thinking and writing, I would start to have a question to Francesco. How long have you actually looked at the different family policies in those European states, and what if you got the impression that family policies in those states come closer to each other, or are they even more separated? Are they more similar than they were 10 years, 15, 20 years ago? Or what kind of development do you see?
Well, my impression is that there is a slight convergence on some specific issues. Sometimes it's helped by the European Union intervention. For instance, on parental leaves and paternal leaves, there was a strong shift towards a better protection for families. But on the whole, I think that national attitudes from public policies and from family choices is still rather different. So the mix, the national mix of the services, cash, the fiscal interventions, and support from grandparents and something like this is still determined by national attitudes rather than by a higher convergence among the European models. And I think that at a more international scope, it is much higher, this variation.
Well, we have Anne Berger raising her hand. Usually we don't mention the names of the attendees because of, as you know, those webinars are anonymous, but she's raised her hand, and maybe we can let her in, having her remark, being up very early, coming from Boston. And nice to have you here.
Very sorry that I came in late. I had the time listed for UK, not Central European. So I came exactly at 3:30 and not 2:30. But I was able, and I'm sorry to have missed Martino and Annemie's portions, but I did hear what Francesco had to say. And I got to tell you that we're studying a lot of that here. We help people with tax credits and tax advantages. We don't generally give direct funding. It's not our model. But direct funding is probably, in my opinion, sometimes a better way.
Were you finished, Anne?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure whether that was the end of your statement or
Yeah.
whether you got interrupted. Francesco, do you want to add to that, or maybe even Annemie? We have Sarah coming in.
Okay, I can say a few words because every country has different policies, and I think that fiscal intervention is more a subsidiarian approach because it leaves the money in the pockets of families rather than picking them out and then giving them back in the form of a voucher of some amount of money every month. Anyway, it depends also on how much money you can raise, because the difference, for instance, between Germany and Italy is that In Germany, this amount of money given directly to the families is the same, is universal, the same for without any mean tests, without any income leverage. While in Italy, there is a strong reduction while your income is raising. So it is quite different. And okay.
If I may add to that, I would say that indeed direct funding and cash benefits are always in the discussion to consider by many people as the most direct way to support families. And you mentioned it also in your presentation, Francesco, they are usually child-related. So we see that those child-related direct cash benefits are easier contributed by so many states than giving to the families as such a kind of support. I don't know if you agree with that, Francesco, that, yeah, considering what is a family, which family, and so many national systems have sometimes, they work more on individual level, and they do not consider the family as an entity. So they focus on children, which is good for a family, but it's another approach, naturally, of this cash benefits.
Let's have Sarah in first, and then I have to admit I have to make a comment myself actually on this. Sarah.
Both Martino and Francesco's presentations were very interesting, but I have a question that regards the elder members of the families, which haven't been touched on at all in this webinar. It's all been concentrated around childcare. Are there no systems in place in these countries that benefit the older generation?
Well, maybe I go into this right now. I don't want to speak for Martino because he can speak for himself, but actually as Observatory, I can say that that was kind of the main aim, to concentrate in this context on the early family period. Of course, there are other methods and other support systems for the elderly. And when it comes to myself, I'm always a very, very huge fan of defining family centers as not only being for the family with small children, but also for the elderly. But this was just not the focus of the report
of today,
which doesn't mean that there isn't any. But
okay.
Indeed, you're completely right. It's falls off behind way too often, because it's very often that you would see families and define it in the first place as having children and taking care of that.
If I may add to that, I think, like you say, Sven, the Observatory, the first report that Martino presented very well, is focused on families with young children, but we have the ambition to follow the life course, and therefore we started with those families. So if we follow the life course, we will sooner or later, I mean, hopefully soon, come up also with a presentation of the systems with elderly care, which is in Coface certainly a really important topic, because we just launched a platform to have these care issues considered more formally and put them on the agenda. So it is really a good question, Sarah, but there is an explanation for this from
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you.
And I would personally be happy if ICCFR would maybe propose to do a little bit more on this issue, indeed. Martino.
No, nothing. Just like a reaction on the, or a reaction / question on Francesco's comments about the conclusions emerging from the report, because okay, but to me the argument for services versus direct transfers to families or tax breaks, it's that services are perhaps a better instrument. I think the argument goes the services are a better instrument to level the field, because at some point I don't know, I think they lend themselves better to a universalist vision. Like, you can transfer money to a family in an area that is deprived of, I'm thinking, early childhood education and care structures, and they will not be able to access early childhood education and care, no matter how much money you transfer to them. I mean, they may be able to pursue private childcare, home-based childcare on the market, but arguably that would be of a different quality, of a different type of services compared to that. Anyway, I think so. Guaranteeing access to a service with a certain quality baseline all across the territory, you could argue is a better tool to guarantee equality across the territory. But then on the comparative reflection that you made, that I thought was interesting, I wanted to ask this because I think the difference in, let's say, cultural approaches to, I don't know, childcare arrangements also emerges from our report. Although I brought it down, I had the impression that to a degree, attitudes, for instance, towards parental leave versus transfers depended more correlated on political fault lines than on actual cultures. So you could see, I don't know, parties of a similar political extraction pursuing similar policies across European countries, more than European countries and national culture, more than a national variation between the different countries themselves, which begs, in a certain sense, a question, because I'm always wondering, like, how can we completely compare approaches, for instance, early childhood education and care, between areas of Europe or even areas within the same national country where there are different levels of provision. I come from a region in Italy, north, where early childhood education developed late. Like beginning of 2000, we had something around 8 to 10% coverage. And the general approach towards these services was one very skeptical, especially in rural areas. People would not trust them. There's been a massive investment in this service, which became like large available. And right now we have 50% participation rate. So families, once you offer them the option, may develop their approach towards a certain type of provision. Whereas, and again, so I'm sometimes wondering if, like, in Scandinavian countries where the coverage is broad, attitudes towards these services tends to be quite open and positive, with variation, because in Denmark you have 85% participation, in Finland no, but like you could argue that the like interplays between ECC and for instance, and family benefits that in Finland are really generous. I don't know. So how do we solve this this comparative dilemma?
If there is a way to solve it, I would like to make one remark on what Francesco said, because he mentioned the German case when it comes to the direct support, monetary support for families and the taxes. I think in Germany it's a little bit more complicated than you just put it, and that's what I meant when I said in the beginning. Sometimes things seem to be comparable, but they are not. And if you go into detail, then it might become a little bit more complicated, because one of the main discussions we have is indeed whether those people who are supported by the tax system and those people supported by the direct benefits, whether they are really the same off. And the comparison that is made there is, how is the tax system to those people not having any children and to those people that have children? And the comparison would be, well, you have to be better off if you have children. But if you take the social approach, saying you have poor families and you have rich families, then the result looks completely different. And that's one of my remarks, because if you take the tax system as a support for families, what you don't reach is the fight against poverty, because usually those families being in poverty don't pay any taxes. So if you have advantage in the tax system, it doesn't help them because they don't pay any taxes as well. Anyway, so those families would only really get support by the direct money. Yes, I couldn't help myself to have that remark. Francesco, do you want to react on this?
No, I agree with you. In fact, we have two dimensions, which are the distinction between childless and with children, and the poverty dilemma. So we should manage them together, which is not often used. And for instance, in Italy, it is not well used, this balanced criteria. So it is not an ideal model. We need to, the real point for me is if you recognize that the burden of having children and supporting it, not as a private choice, but as a contribution to the public good. And this is the good reason for having family support to families with children. And obviously, you have to take care of the families who are not supported if they have not enough income. So it is not to take one or another as a separate choice, but it is to balance the approach, I think. Which is the same about what Martino was saying about services, introducing services, because it is a sort of circular process, in fact. If you offer better services, you can improve a general attitude, but you have also to listen to people, because for many families, it is still relevant to have more time with children and less time devoted to work or to other activities. So it is a circular, possibly growing and balance the process of improving the opportunities, in fact.
Annemie?
I may intervene on those 2 points that we are discussing. First of all, Sven, I think in Belgium we have found a solution to have also poor families having an advantage, because they get a credit from the moment you have a very low income. Instead of a tax reduction, you get a tax credit, so they get a beneficial system. Maybe it works. But also the interesting question that Martino raised about the cultural aspect is, in my opinion, the thing that we should tackle, because so many times it is an excuse for doing nothing from the government, that they say, but it's culturally linked. Families want to stay at home. They don't want to bring their children to the child care facility. But I think, like Martino highlighted, attitudes towards services are changing. If you offer quality service, at least, then you can really change the attitudes. And that's nothing to do with culture. I mean, it should not be an excuse to say it's a culture of, for example, Italian people, that people prefer to stay at home and not giving their children. It must be a choice. And if there is no service, then you have no choice. And that was my point, I think, highlight that we as Coface, we are offering people trying to do so the things, the services, so that they can make a choice. It's quite a puzzle, but every family has to choose their own culture, and it should not be mentioned so many like that, I think. Sometimes it is really the choice of the family, and then we have to accept, but if it is really claimed as cultural choice by the government, then we should have a critical view on this, I think.
If nobody else has a question or remark, if you do, just please just raise your hand or put it somewhere. Your interest. I would like to have a question to Martino. I've been asking myself, looking at those different infrastructure systems that have a lot of things in common, like helping for the families, like help for the children, but have different names. I mean, we have the health of the child, then we have family centers. well, in Germany, additionally, we have something like this early help systems and prevention change. Is there a meaning to the names? Actually, have you found out something about this or some feelings about that? Whether this is really a priority that is can be seen in the name, or is it just, well, the politics trying to find fancy names for things they invented, which is an obvious tendency we have had in the last years as well.
So if families are the primary targets, so if families are in fact the primary targets of these services, or is just services created for a different reason than renamed after families for political purposes?
I mean, the health of the child, but what you said about the health of the child sounds very similar to what you said about the family centers. Both have the family at least in the background as a target group. Or is that different?
No, okay. I think that Annemie could jump in and correct me. I have the feeling that in the case of Finland, families, expectant parents and new parents are really the target of the services, and the services are born as multifunctional settings to solve problem of accessibility, basically. In the case of Flanders, I have the feeling that these services have evolved from outpatient pediatric clinics, so for kids. So there is a reason why they're called houses of the child, because the idea there were healthcare services, ambulatories targeting children, which then expanded into something bigger, also bringing families on. In Germany, I have the impression that, okay, in Germany, I think they developed in each land, they followed a slightly different trajectory, but at least in North Rhine-Westphalia, I call them family centers, and to a degree, that's also how they're called in there. But they also have this second name, which is Kitas Plus. So they retain the name of the original nursery-like service. And again, makes sense because these are like 0 to 6, 0 to 3 daycare centers that get a bit like in the Flemish case, expanded to bring families on board. So depending on where you put the focus, on the fact that they were originally some daycare centers, or on the fact that they are expanding to capture the family, both names are explained. My impression is that transversally, the two or three transversal goals that administrations that develop these services are pursuing are, okay, there is one that is economic efficiency. I have the impression creates these multi-agency solutions, saves money, especially there is a problem of accessibility, and making it easier for families to jump in. And then there is a third that I had in mind, and I forgot. Accessibility, increasing efficiency, and and like in the case of Finland, leveling the field between areas with different levels of provision. So, for instance, what they did in Finland were, up until I think 3 years ago, municipalities had the responsibilities for health and social care, and therefore for this integrated provision in family centers. They found there was too much regional discrepancies in the levels of these provisions. So they decided that, they had a reinvestment in these family center structures. They took them away from the municipalities. They scaled it up one level of governments. They created this district-like governance level, and they basically put them in charge of the family centers and said, okay, now we're investing heavily on these structures and we're trying to guarantee a level playing field across the entire country of Finland. And it's easier to do it through this. Instead of working on 5 different services, we're working on this integrated one. So,
yeah.
My last very, very fast comment on that. The Italian case is only educational. It is inside the educational system, while the Finnish model, as far as I could understand, was of strong integration with the health and social services, which is a real problem in our areas, because then we have different services that need to speak each other to help a single family who has to go to different places and so on, like Martino was saying. So this could be a very interesting experimentation for us to learn from.
I think it is. We still have Sarah having her hand up. Do you want to come in, and then we just have to find, I think, our end already. Sarah? Are you there? Well, Sarah might be looking for her unmute button. We'll have Anne before.
Okay. No, don't worry. It's been covered. Thank you.
Anne?
I'm just going to.
And we lost you.
You hear me?
Now we hear you again, yes.
Okay. You know me and technology. Okay. I just wanted to add one more layer to this, at least from an American perspective. We have a layer of problem for this that probably most European countries don't consider as much. We have an enormous population of non-English speakers, and they don't get the services largely because they don't speak English and they don't know the services exist. And another layer is that many of them are not properly documented, let me put it that way. And so they're afraid to ask for the services. And that's where my part of the piece comes in, because I'm a lawyer and I go into those populations and try to, number one, get them translators. Number two, get them notice about the services in their language. And we have many languages. The largest is Spanish, but we have many others. And the third thing is to try to reassure the undocumented ones that registering for those services is not going to expose them to the immigration system. Very, very difficult problem and very American.
I don't think it's solely American. In Europe, it might not be the largest problem of having undocumented immigrants, but still, I think the challenges we have about migration within the countries, and with having the challenge to approach them and get them into our systems really is one that might also be a topic that we could talk about in ICCFR, and we have done so in Coface, I know, but this will be an emerging and enlarging problem, I think.
Yeah.
Martino want to come in, and then I think we have to close down.
I think I agree with you. I think, in fact, in Finland, I think assistance to migrant families is one of those principles, is one of those key functions that all family centers need to follow. And that's what I was referring to in terms of increasing the accessibility of, like, helping families to navigate through a really complicated service system. Yeah. And yeah, in fact, sorry, Annemie.
No, I just
you have now some closing words if you want to.
No. I had already introduction. It's up to you. But I just wanted to say also, coming back on the House of the Child and on the naming, I think more or less the topics and the experts that are there gathering are focusing on education of children. So they're not so focused on relationship and partnership and so on. So that's, in my opinion, the explanation why it is House of the Child and not House of the Families. You see, but it is on evolution. We are enlarging now the scope, but this was what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yes, and I think it is a good moment to talk about exactly this, as so much is evolving and developing in those branches, and we see this, I think, in all, at least European countries. I don't have that much access to the other countries. Might be interesting to have a follow-up meeting on other countries than the Europeans, that obviously Martino, Francesco, and I know best. But indeed, like Anne had indicated, looking at the US, what the system looks like there, and then having maybe also the Asian or Near East perspective on this. That might be interesting, but we can't do that today because we have only foreseen 1.5 hours, which are over right now, as we have started 5 minutes late. Now we end 5 minutes late, which makes exactly 90 minutes. It was very nice and very interesting to have you all here. Martino, Francesco, especially Annemie, thank you, and Casey, of course, having the overlook of everything to make this possible. Yeah, I guess a lot to talk about and a lot to follow up, and then we will do that in the next month. For those who are not aware, ICCFR is having the next conference in Malta in November, and you're very, very much invited. Everybody who's interested in ICCFR should have a note to Casey, who's the one who sent out the invitation links, and anyone who's interested in Coface can write either to Annemie, Martino, or myself. At least we are very, very happy for further collaboration. But for now, we'll leave it as it is. Thanks, everybody, and hope to see you soon, and maybe even in person, and have a nice evening, day, or afternoon for now. Thanks, and bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Sven. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao, bye.
Bye-bye.